Famous photographer vanished in Glacier National Park. 6 months later, a drone uncovered the truth. He was a world-famous photographer, chasing the perfect sunrise in Glacier National Park. But on February 8, 2024, Elliot Crane vanished into a storm that swallowed all trace of him. Weeks passed. Months went by. Then, 6 months later, a drone captured something frozen in ice. A discovery so shocking, it answered questions no one dared ask, and raised even more. The morning air in Glacier National Park was sharp enough to steal warmth from your bones before you could even notice. Snow glistened across jagged ridges, each flake catching the pale sunlight like fractured glass. For most, the park was breathtaking. For Elliot Crane, 48, it was a calling, a siren, a place where silence and danger met in perfect symmetry. That morning, February 8, 2024, Elliot kissed his sister Clara goodbye at the small Montana cabin where he had been staying. His gear was packed meticulously: camera bag, lenses, tripod, thermal jacket, gloves, and GPS tracker. Everything a man obsessed with capturing the perfect frame could need. He adjusted the strap over his shoulder, glanced at the snow-dusted mountains in the distance, and whispered, almost to himself, "Just one more sunrise." Clara watched him with unease she could not fully explain. She had seen him leave for dangerous expeditions countless times before, yet there was something in his eyes that day, a glint she did not recognize. It was familiar, but sharper, more urgent. She tried to smile. "You've been saying that every morning for a week," she said. "Promise me you'll be careful." Elliot didn't reply. He never did. Instead, he walked past her, his boots crunching in the fresh snow, and climbed into his truck. The engine hummed to life, then disappeared down the winding road toward Hidden Lake Trailhead, leaving behind only tracks that the wind and snow would soon erase. By mid-afternoon, the first signs of trouble began to appear. The sky, once pale and clear, darkened with rolling clouds. Winds picked up along the ridges, carrying flakes that stung the skin. Park rangers monitoring GPS devices noticed a faint ping from Elliot's tracker at 5:17 p.m. along the west ridge of Logan Pass. It was the last transmission. Beyond that, silence. By nightfall, when he had not returned, Clara's worry transformed into fear. She called the park rangers, her voice trembling. "He's missing," she said. "Please, you have to find him." The urgency in her tone launched one of the most extensive search operations in Glacier National Park's history. Helicopters rose into the cold night sky. Ground teams hiked treacherous ridges. Search dogs strained against the icy wind. Every effort was swallowed by the mountain. By February 10th, Elliot's truck was found near the trailhead, covered in a thin layer of fresh snow. Inside, the camera case was gone, and his journal lay open on the passenger seat. In neat, familiar handwriting, one line stood out: "The ice breathes here. You just have to listen long enough." Park officials weren't sure whether to treat it as a warning, a clue, or the eccentric musings of a man obsessed with wilderness solitude. To Clara, it was unmistakably a warning. The storm, relentless and unrelenting, was turning the search into a nightmare. Winds gusted above 70 miles per hour. Temperatures plummeted below -20 degrees Celsius. Snow fell so densely that footprints vanished as soon as they were made. By February 11th, helicopters could barely fly, and ground teams were forced to retreat. Every day without Elliot only deepened the mystery, leaving the world to wonder. How could a man so experienced simply disappear into a national park that had been mapped, studied, and explored for decades? And yet, there were hints. A lone ranger reported seeing a shadowed figure on the ridge through binoculars at dawn, hours after Elliot's last GPS ping. But by the time the search team reached the spot, there was nothing. No trace. Only the unbroken snow and the howling wind. Online, the story spread rapidly. Elliot Crane, the photographer who had captured some of the most haunting landscapes in the world, had vanished without a trace. Was it an accident? A misstep on the icy cliffs? Or had he disappeared deliberately, leaving only a cryptic note behind? Every theory seemed plausible, and yet, no evidence could confirm any of them. By February 14th, the mountain itself seemed to mock the search efforts. Rangers reported hidden crevasses that had opened overnight, snow bridges that collapsed under the weight of a boot, and ice tunnels invisible from above. The park had become a labyrinth, an unyielding puzzle that no technology or human effort could solve. Clara refused to give up. She organized volunteer teams, hiked miles through ankle-deep snow, and scoured areas the rangers could not reach. He wouldn't give up, she told a local news crew. Why should we? As the sun set behind the frozen ridges, Elliot remained unseen. Yet, the mountain had not finished revealing its secrets. Something, buried in ice and snow, waited silently. Something that would answer some questions and create far more. The storm showed no mercy. By February 10th, wind gusts tore across the ridges, carrying snow in sheets so dense that visibility dropped to mere feet. Helicopters were grounded, their blades rattling against the cold metal hangars. Rangers on foot struggled to navigate paths that had existed yesterday but now vanished under layers of drifting ice. Every direction became a trap, every step a gamble. Search teams divided into grids, combing known trails and known crevasses. K-9 units sniffed tirelessly, yet the dogs would often stop, ears raised, their breaths visible in the frozen air, staring into voids that humans could not see. No matter how far teams ventured, Elliot Crane was nowhere to be found. His tracks, his gear, even the faintest glimmer of his presence had been swallowed by the storm. Inside the park's command center, monitors flickered with GPS blips from Elliot's last known location. Analysts attempted to triangulate a path he might have taken. One signal, faint and brief, suggested he had reached a ridge far higher than anticipated. But then the signal vanished entirely, leaving nothing but uncertainty. Clara joined the search parties when they allowed civilians into safer zones. Her determination mirrored Elliot's own obsessive drive for perfection. She trudged through snow that reached her knees, checking every crevice, peering under every boulder. He wouldn't give up, she told herself. I can't either. Then came the first odd clue. A ranger discovered footprints on a snow bridge near Hidden Lake, partially obscured by drifting snow. The impressions were faint, irregular, as though someone had balanced carefully while moving over treacherous ice. Adjacent to the prints were smaller, lighter depressions that could not be definitively identified. They were human-like, yet inconsistent with any known hiker patterns. Was it a trick of the snow? Wildlife? Or had Elliot been accompanied by someone else? The discovery sent ripples of speculation through both the park and online forums. Amateur trackers, photographers, and conspiracy theorists debated feverishly. One post suggested he had fallen into an ice tunnel. Another claimed the footprints were deliberately staged. No evidence could confirm either theory, yet the suspense drew attention from national media. Inside the temporary command tent, search coordinators faced a brutal truth. Glacier National Park was unpredictable. Hidden crevasses had opened overnight. Ice tunnels collapsed without warning. Snowdrifts swallowed entire ridges. What had seemed accessible yesterday was now perilous today. Every decision carried risk, for Elliot and for the teams trying to find him. By February 14th, reports began to emerge of strange sightings. A lone ranger swore he saw a shadowed figure moving across a ridge at dawn, hours after Elliot's last GPS ping. When approached, the area was empty. Nothing remained. The wind had erased everything, yet the image lingered in the mind of the witness, chilling and inexplicable. Meanwhile, the world outside held its breath. Headlines blared across newspapers and social media. Famed photographer vanishes into Glacier Park storm. Mystery in the mountains. Where is Elliot Crane? Search intensifies as Glacier refuses to give clues. The more time passed, the deeper the mystery became. Search teams had covered every known path, yet no body, no camera, no final clue emerged. The mountain's silence was absolute. And then, at the very edges of the search grid, one overlooked crevice caught the eye of a volunteer. A faint glimmer beneath thin ice reflected the rising sun. It was almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. Something lay there, waiting, hidden under the frozen surface. Something that would finally begin to answer questions nobody had dared to ask. By August 17, 2024, Glacier National Park had transformed into a stark landscape of contrasts. The winter storms that had swept the mountains in February had long since passed, leaving behind channels carved by melting ice, exposed ridges, and narrow gullies that had been inaccessible for months. The once hidden terrain now revealed a jagged, almost alien world of fractured snow and glistening ice. Volunteers moved cautiously across these newly revealed surfaces, scanning every rock, slope, and fissure for anything the previous searches might have missed. Among them was Riley O'Donnell, a drone pilot with years of experience mapping glaciers for climate studies. His routine missions had trained him to notice anomalies, subtle disturbances that might go undetected by the human eye. That morning, the crisp air cut across his face as he prepared his drone, the rotors slicing through the cold, thin wind. He maneuvered it over Hidden Lake, sweeping the glacier's melt zones systematically, inch by inch. Hours passed. Snowbanks reflected the sun, fractured ice caught light in unpredictable patterns, and jagged rocks jutted from the surface like frozen teeth. For the most part, the landscape seemed untouched, pristine, and silent. Then, at precisely 9:12 a.m., something flickered in the drone's camera feed. A faint glint, metallic and unnatural, emerged beneath a thin sheet of ice. Riley's heart quickened. At first glance, he dismissed it as debris, remnants from old expeditions, fallen equipment, or simply ice reflecting sunlight. But as he adjusted the drone's angle, zooming in, the object revealed itself more clearly. It was a tripod, half buried in ice, leaning at a precarious angle, accompanied by a small bundle that shifted slightly with the wind. Riley's chest tightened. Could it be? Could the drone have finally located Elliot Crane, the photographer who had vanished 6 months earlier in these unforgiving peaks? Rangers were notified immediately, and by noon, a small team of search and rescue personnel approached the site. The terrain was treacherous. Melting snow had created hidden crevasses, and ice bridges had formed that could collapse under the weight of a single person. Every step was deliberate, each footfall a calculated risk. Breath came in visible puffs, clouds of vapor that dissolved quickly in the cold air. As the team neared the glinting object, the realization hit them slowly, almost unbearably. Beneath 6 feet of snow and ice lay Elliot Crane. His body was remarkably preserved, encased in the glacier's frozen silence. His down jacket had stiffened into a rigid shell, frozen in place, and his camera remained clutched to his chest as though he had been in the act of taking a photograph when the mountain claimed him. The lens was shattered, but the SD card inside was miraculously intact, promising answers that no one could yet imagine. Riley, standing nearby, whispered in disbelief, "It's like he's been waiting for us." The scene was surreal. Half a year had passed, yet the glacier had preserved him almost perfectly. His gear's meticulous arrangement suggested intention, not accident. Every item, tripod, camera, and camera bag, was positioned as though Elliot had been conscious in his final moments, documenting the ice and the canyon around him with painstaking care. Then came the first truly inexplicable detail: footprints. Faint, irregular, partially obscured by snow and shifting ice, they surrounded the area where Elliot's body lay. They were inconsistent with human gait, almost as if someone, or something, had been there, carefully stepping in patterns that no one could understand. Had another person been present in those final hours? Or had Elliot moved through the ice in ways no one had imagined, leaving the cryptic traces behind? Inside the park's command tent, photographers and analysts recorded every angle of the site. Images were immediately sent to forensics, news agencies, and global media outlets. The world watched, riveted. Headlines appeared across screens and newspapers alike. Missing photographer found in Glacier Park. Months later, ice reveals truth. Elliot Crane's final moments captured in frozen silence. Yet, for all the attention, the discovery created more questions than it answered. The SD card contained hundreds of images, many taken in near-total darkness, illuminated only by flash. Shadows appeared in some frames, abstract, jagged shapes that could have been reflections or perhaps signs of something, or someone else in proximity. The last 12 photographs were particularly haunting. Elliot's own reflection shimmered across the ice tunnels and fissures, a spectral figure documenting his surroundings, seemingly aware of a presence beyond the camera lens. Analysts debated for hours. Could the shadows be wildlife? Optical illusions? A trick of the flash against the ice? Or proof that someone else had shared the glacier with Elliot in those final hours? Every theory seemed plausible, every answer incomplete. By nightfall, Glacier National Park seemed to reclaim its dominance. The wind picked up, gusting across ridges and gullies, carrying the distant sounds of shifting ice and settling snow. Rangers secured the site, establishing a perimeter for overnight observation. Few slept that night. Even with Elliot found, the mountain refused to yield all its secrets. Every shadow, every shifting snowdrift, whispered of mysteries yet unresolved. The SD card, carefully extracted from Elliot Crane's frozen camera, became the centerpiece of forensic analysis. Specialists in digital recovery worked meticulously, isolating every file without altering the original data. Each image, each frame of video, was examined for metadata, timestamps, and environmental clues. What the investigators found would deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. The first images were what one might expect: wide, breathtaking landscapes of glaciers, jagged ridges, and fractured ice. Elliot's perspective was meticulous, almost obsessive. The camera captured angles that no casual hiker could imagine, compositions that spoke of years of experience and an intimate understanding of the mountain. But then, subtle anomalies appeared. In certain photographs, shadows bent unnaturally across the snow, elongating in directions inconsistent with the sun's position. Reflections in icy crevasses seemed to contain shapes that did not correspond to any known object. In one haunting frame, a dark silhouette stood at the edge of a ridge, just beyond Elliot's reach. The timestamp indicated it had been taken minutes before the last GPS ping, yet no other human was ever recorded on the mountain in that location. Further analysis of the SD card revealed dozens of images taken in near-complete darkness. Elliot's flash illuminated the interior of ice tunnels and small crevices. In these photos, objects appeared that investigators could not immediately identify. A bundle of rope lying across a fissure, a shadowy figure reflected multiple times in the crystalline ice, and the tripod, positioned deliberately as though marking a path. Digital enhancement brought even more chilling details to light. In one video clip, the camera had recorded subtle movements across the frozen ridge. At first, it looked like drifting snow or a gust of wind. But closer scrutiny revealed footprints forming and disappearing almost as if erased by an invisible hand. Every frame suggested careful, intentional placement. Whoever, or whatever, was present had been aware of Elliot, moving deliberately in sync with him. The forensic team presented their preliminary findings to Glacier National Park officials. The mood in the room was tense. One analyst, specializing in ice preservation photography, remarked, "It's as if he knew someone was there, or that something was watching him, and he captured it all." Meanwhile, Elliot's personal journal, recovered from his cabin, provided context for the images. Entries described the exhilaration of isolation, the thrill of icy landscapes, and a growing awareness of patterns in the glacier. Shifting ice, faint echoes, and fleeting shadows. The last entry read, "The ice moves differently this year. I hear whispers, not voices, movements. I think it's aware." The investigators were stunned. The combination of journal notes, shadows and photos, and footprints on the SD card suggested something far beyond a simple accident. But the evidence was ambiguous enough to leave room for interpretation. Could it have been another human? Or something else entirely, hidden in the folds of the glacier for months? By nightfall, the world watched as media outlets broadcast the first recovered images. Audiences were mesmerized. Elliot's meticulous framing of the glacier's beauty contrasted sharply with the unnatural shapes in some photographs. Social media buzzed with speculation. Some viewers insisted it was optical illusion. Others believed in a second presence, unseen yet captured in fleeting glimpses. Even the coroner's preliminary examination provided more questions than answers. The frozen body showed no trauma consistent with a fall. There were no marks of injury, no signs of struggle, and yet Elliot had perished in the ice. The initial assessment suggested hypothermia combined with exposure, but the absence of wounds made some experts uneasy. By the end of the first week after recovery, Glacier National Park officials held a press conference. Cameras flashed as a ranger addressed the public. Elliot Crane's body has been recovered. His equipment suggests he documented his final hours with remarkable precision. We cannot yet explain all anomalies in the photographs. Investigations continue, and the mountain may hold secrets that we are not fully prepared to understand. Days after Elliot Crane's recovery, forensic specialists began the painstaking work of cross-referencing images, journal entries, and environmental data. The SD card held hundreds of files, each meticulously time-stamped. Investigators noticed something immediately unsettling. Patterns in the photographs aligned with known natural timeline. Images taken hours apart sometimes appeared to capture the same shadow in slightly different positions. It was as if the mountain itself, or something within it, had been moving in deliberate synchronization with Elliot's camera. The footprints discovered near Elliot's body were re-examined. Initially dismissed as anomalies caused by shifting ice, advanced imaging revealed subtle depressions forming in impossible sequences. Some prints appeared behind the body, others alongside it, yet none corresponded to any known human gait. Specialists dubbed them anomalous prints, unable to determine whether they were the result of a person, wildlife, or an unknown force acting within the glacier. Meanwhile, the journal offered more cryptic insight. Elliot had written of whispers beneath the ice, movements in tunnels he explored, and fleeting glimpses of forms he could not identify. One passage, written just hours before his final departure, read, "The ice watches. I am part of it, and it part of me. If I stay too long, I will not leave. I understand now." Forensic psychologists suggested the entries reflected his deep obsession with the glacier. Yet paired with the photographs and footprints, they hinted at something far more unnerving. Elliot may have perceived a presence that remained invisible to others, yet left traces in subtle, undeniable ways. The SD card revealed the final sequence of photographs, images Elliot had taken in the dim light of ice tunnels. Shadows twisted along crystalline walls. Reflections multiplied unnaturally in the ice, creating the illusion of motion even where none existed. One frame stood out. Elliot, partially visible in the lower corner, appeared to be reaching toward a dark form, indistinct yet unmistakably present. Metadata confirmed the photo was taken less than 30 minutes before his last GPS ping. Experts debated its significance. Was the dark form a reflection, a second person, or something else entirely? Every answer raised more questions. The footage suggested that Elliot had not merely succumbed to exposure accidentally. He had been interacting with the environment in ways that defied conventional explanation. The coroner's final report added another layer of intrigue. The cause of death was confirmed as hypothermia and prolonged exposure, but the body showed no signs of trauma, no evidence of a fall, and no indication that he had been assisted or attacked. The precise positioning of his gear indicated deliberate movement. He had paused, arranged items, and captured images with care in his final hours. Investigators returned repeatedly to the photographs. Using enhanced analysis, they discovered subtle anomalies in several frames, disturbances in the ice that could not be explained by wind, animal tracks, or snow shifts. In some cases, shadows suggested that something moved behind him just out of the camera's direct view. The evidence suggested interaction, fleeting, intentional, and unseen. Public fascination reached a fever pitch. News outlets broadcast the SD card images, sparking debates online. Some argued for optical illusions. Others theorized secret collaborators or hidden guides, while a vocal subset insisted the glacier itself had some unknown awareness. Social media threads proliferated with theories, yet no one could definitively explain the anomalies. Weeks passed as Glacier National Park officials, forensic analysts, and digital experts pieced together Elliot Crane's final hours. Every photograph, every footprint, and every journal entry formed a puzzle that teased a larger, unsettling story. The evidence hinted at deliberate interaction with the glacier, yet no living presence was confirmed. The mountain's silence seemed almost sentient. One morning, Riley O'Donnell returned to the site, this time accompanied by forensic photographers and a geologist specializing in glacier dynamics. They hoped to understand how the ice had preserved Elliot's body and gear so meticulously. As the team approached, a sudden icequake shook the ridge, startling the group and sending a minor avalanche cascading down a nearby slope. It reminded them just how unstable and alive the glacier still was, an entity that both protected and concealed its secrets. Investigators focused on the final SD card images, the dozen haunting frames taken in dim light. Digital enhancement revealed subtle movements in the shadows, almost imperceptible shifts that occurred between exposures. In one frame, a dark form appeared near Elliot's tripod. It did not resemble any human or animal shape known to the region. The edges were irregular, almost liquid-like, as though the glacier itself had momentarily solidified around an invisible entity. Further analysis revealed Elliot's last movements. The metadata suggested he had paused repeatedly, adjusting his camera, arranging his gear, and documenting ice tunnels with obsessive precision. The footprints near the body matched these pauses. Each mark corresponded to careful positioning, not erratic wandering. Investigators concluded he had likely sought shelter in a natural alcove, arranging his camera to capture what he had sensed in the shadows. Meanwhile, a team of climatologists studying glacier melt patterns discovered an unusual anomaly near the site. Ice cores taken from beneath Elliot's location revealed pockets of air and water that had remained trapped for months. The cores displayed microscopic fractures that aligned with the shadows seen in the photographs. In layman's terms, the glacier itself had shifted subtly around him, almost as if responding to his presence. Scientists hesitated to draw conclusions, yet the data suggested a phenomenon previously unrecorded, a glacier that interacted with movement and temperature in localized, unpredictable ways. The coroner's office issued the final report. Elliot Crane had died of hypothermia, but the circumstances were extraordinary. There were no injuries, no signs of struggle, yet his death was marked by careful positioning and deliberate action in the final hours. He had likely been documenting a phenomenon that was invisible to the naked eye, but tangible enough to provoke deliberate responses in his movements and arrangements. Public reaction was immediate. The story of Elliot Crane became a global sensation. Documentaries were commissioned, articles went viral, and social media erupted with debate. Some argued for natural explanations, unusual ice formations, optical illusions, or meteorological anomalies. Others proposed more speculative theories, a sentient glacier, unseen presences, or phenomena beyond human understanding. Despite months of investigation, one truth remained undeniable. Elliot had documented his own last hours with extraordinary precision, capturing the mountain's behavior in ways that defied conventional explanation. Every footprint, every shadow, every image was a clue to a final interaction between man and nature, between observer and environment. Glacier National Park returned to silence, but Elliot Crane's story lingered. His body, camera, and carefully arranged gear revealed the beauty and danger of the mountains, and the unexplained shadows, footprints, and movements captured in his final photographs. Family and friends honored his courage and obsession with the wild, while experts marveled at the anomalies he documented. The glacier had preserved him perfectly, yet it still held its deepest secret. Hikers and researchers now spoke of subtle disturbances in the snow and ice, hinting that Elliot had encountered something extraordinary, something science could not explain. His legacy endured. A man who chased the unknown, recorded it, and left the world with one haunting question: what truly exists in the depths of the mountains, waiting for those brave enough to follow?